Welcome to Let's Talk Licensing Live, where we discuss the impact and importance of intellectual property to grow your career and or business. I am your host, your conductor, your narrator, your orchestrator. I'm Shadeed Eleazer. And so in this particular stream, we're going to discuss how intellectual property will grow your service based business. But we're not going to do a whole lot of talking. I'm going to walk you through some visual examples so that the point is crystal clear. And so, with intellectual property, no matter if you are a career professional, meaning you work for a company, you're not looking to quit your job, you love your job. In fact, you're celebrated within your industry as an author, a speaker, a leader of some sort. Maybe you have a following. There's no need to quit your job. Maybe you're a freelancer, for example. Maybe you are a full time entrepreneur, you're building multiple ventures. Intellectual property plays a role in what you're doing. And I'll even tell you this, in my evaluation of business models, and I have a unique position where I'm able to, I get the opportunity to evaluate businesses and business plans and growth plans and valuations on a regular basis and have done so for quite some time. The majority of service based businesses who are under the seven figure radar or trajectory all have a lack of clarity when it comes to intellectual property. Every seven figure plus small business or service based business has intellectual property at the forefront of their business operations and they use IP as a bargaining chip, as a negotiation tool and strategy to grow their business. And so, where do you fit on that scale? Are you struggling, meaning you can't necessarily identify what your IP is, ranging to you know what your IP is, but you haven't taken the steps to register, protect, and identify what your IP is? Or are you on the far end of the scale where you know what your IP is? You have a IP strategy, you have a team that manages and negotiates on behalf of your IP. And let's take it a step further. Your IP is used as a tool in the growth of your business or valuation, or let's say it's part of your estate planning, meaning your IP is positioned to benefit your children's children's children. And so we all talk about generational wealth, and it's a popular buzzword amongst the young business elite these days. But how do you get there? How do you get to having talent, having skills, having revenue? Maybe you've made some money in your time, and you want to, of course, make sure the next generation is better off than you. And I can tell you, if you have not defined your intellectual property strategy, then you are leaving a fundamental aspect of estate planning on the table in terms of lost opportunity. And so, what motivated this conversation that I'm having with you is that I recently attended a training where the focus of this training was scaling from $100,000 to about five to $600,000. Now, I appreciated the focus of this company on scaling behind the typical goals of 10K per month, uh, that you hear so many coaches list as a performance metric, and 10K a month is your key to success. If you make 10K a month, you've made it. And so when someone comes along and says, you know what, 10K is not it. Let's get you to 5 to 600K. That intrigued me because that individual is thinking, let's say, on stage 2 or 3 levels beyond the industry. So I listened in, and to hear the ideas being shared, I participated. And imagine my surprise when we get to, okay, here's the recipe, and the strategy to get there is what I've been teaching you guys for years now, which is the art and science of packaging your knowledge, creating intellectual property, and leveraging it through licensing deals. Funny he mentioned that. And so I said, wait a minute, that is proof that although I've used licensing to create successful results in my own life, and have done so since 2008, is always great as you're heading down a path. And as we go into the launch and opening the doors of the Content Licensing Academy, that this is a strategy that is being shared. And like I said, if you're headed towards any sort of 7-figure trajectory, licensing intellectual property is the game that you need to be playing. And you need to have a team that is managing your IP outside of your individual efforts. That's the game that the real players are executing in their businesses. And so, with that in mind, as I check for any comments, and if you have any questions on intellectual property for coaches, speakers, authors, business owners, I'm here to answer those. You can post those in the comments, and I will reply to them either live or post broadcast after I eat a little dinner. I will reply to your questions with detailed and specific answers to help you learn, grow, and prosper. So, what separates what I do with intellectual property, because one of the questions that I receive, especially with partnerships, joint venture partners, is what separates your work from intellectual property attorneys? And that's a great question, because I have several service based or fulfillment partnerships with intellectual property attorneys or IP attorneys. And the IP attorney in my model is not something that you should discard. You need an IP attorney if you're going to play the game at a high stakes level. And so when it comes to IP attorneys in relation to my specific problem solving, it's the IP attorney generally can register, protect, and enforce your intellectual property, of course. But when it comes to the nuances of the deal, meaning if I am going into a licensing partnership with Harvard University, for example, the back and forth of, let's say, the PowerPoint slides need to have the Harvard logo and need to have the Harvard Crimson Red branding in order for this licensing deal for, let's say, Bob, the business coach, is submitting a business training program for students for the School of Business, let's say at Harvard. And so the back and forth of the updates, the revisions, the content development that for intellectual property is not the skill set of an IP attorney. They're great at contracts and, let's say, registration of, let's say, trademarks, copyrights, etc., and also shopping your deal. But you don't pay an IP attorney to jump in Canva. You don't pay an IP attorney to do market research. You don't pay an IP attorney to re-record modules, for example. And in many cases, what you'll find with IP attorneys is some of them will try to take on that work. They may be tech savvy, they may know their way around Canva, they may be a great presenter. But if you're paying that retainer for an IP attorney, things can get out of hand from a cost perspective. So, what started to happen some years ago is IP attorneys started to come to me and say, "Hey, I have someone who is has all the goods. They have a profitable program. We shopped it to an agency, university, or corporation, and I need your help making this program, this book, this course license ready. So taking the idea and transforming it into intellectual property that is ready, compliant, and able to be licensed on a professional level is my unique source of genius. And so it's combining all those details of business development. And what separates my work from anyone else you come around is that instead of building a business around service delivery and fulfillment, we utilize intellectual property as the foundation, the nucleus, the hub, and build the business around intellectual property partnerships and use intellectual property for leads, subscribers, and sales to grow the business. So if I alluded to the fact that if you're going to play a bigger game, intellectual property is something that you need to pretty much figure out. We start at the end. So we start with the foundation in mind of intellectual property for your business, for your coaching practice, for your brand, and build the business around it. So intellectual property from a licensing standpoint is great for increasing leads, sales, subscribers, authority, reputation management, all of the above. There's different use cases where it's an absolute, let's say, asset to have intellectual property as the forefront of your strategy. And so, what I want you to consider as we go into our diagram is to stop chasing clients and start enrolling students. Listen to me. Listen to me. I'm part of a task force that during COVID was responsible for helping um, Black and Brown business owners around the United States get back up and running. Um, Black, let's say minority business America was decimated during the COVID wave, the COVID season, and I learned a lot of lessons in speaking with business leaders around the country. Hours and hours and hours of discussion. And one of the fundamental things that we all have dealt with is supply chains. And so when we talk about the fulfillment process in onboarding clients, there's a let's say an acquisition chain or a procurement chain with standard service delivery today. And so what you have to realize is that the people you're selling to, they are all making decisions as well in terms of what they can afford. And for the first time in history, basic necessities are in question. And so, 2008, for example, and I was active and alive and doing things in 2008, and this is a bit different. And so, that's what you have to keep in mind. So instead of chasing clients, I want you to start to think about installing an educational based center for your service based business. And so when you educate a client, not a prospect. When you educate someone who's coming on board, they tend to stick around longer because they're empowered, they're informed, they feel validated. And so the best clients are smart clients. And what happens is when you package your knowledge to solve a problem, it allows for your clients to grow into and qualify themselves to work on your high ticket offers and your additional mid-level programs, so on and so forth. And so that's the purpose of the digital asset, packaging your knowledge so that you're not spending your time uh, answering the same 15 to 20 questions that you use for every new client. And so that's what I want you to consider. And so when we talk about the upsides of service based businesses, which can include technicians, consultants, freelancers, that's a great way to get cash flow going. But uh, the downsides are the time for money exchange. So, what happens if you burn out? What happens if you get sick? And as I mentioned, clients are not in a advantageous financial place. So the chargebacks and refunds are really throwing off people's profit and loss statements around the world. And so let's go into our diagram and kind of set the record straight here in terms of what you can expect or just help clarify, demystify. Okay, here we go. Share the screen. And so when we have example A, we have what we'll consider our typical service based business. So we have, let's call her Keisha here, business owner, and Keisha's exchanging her services. So these are the tools. And so Keisha's selling to various clients. And so the challenge with the service based value exchange is that you only have a certain amount of time within each day. And so, as I mentioned, if client one is, let's say, buys your course or buys your coaching program, and they're hoping on the back end that you can do something for them so that they can make the money to actually pay you or to pay their bills, and they're competing with paying bills and paying you, then this can be a challenge for you to keep your cash flow afloat and keep it steady. And so that's the big challenge that you face with trying to sell to other people, or let's say to operate a service based value exchange or service based business. Now, as I mentioned, the upside is that if you're just getting started, it's a great way to validate ideas, to stay in the business, to learn market research, yada, yada, yada. But when it comes to scaling, poor Keisha over here is only one person, and there's only so many hours in a day. Keisha may get sick. Keisha may want to spend family time. Keisha may want to take vacation. And so it's tough to grow using that model because it's finite, it's fixed. Example B is where Keisha steps out of the equation and packages her knowledge into intellectual property. So she develops intellectual property. And here's what I want you to realize is that instead of selling to people, you sell to corporations, universities, agencies that have your target audience as its service delivery model. And so, one of my favorite examples is with Small Business Administration, also known as SBA. And so, if you're a business coach or you're some sort of startup consultant, for example, or you're a web designer and you primarily target freelancers or business owners or coaches or people who have careers and aspire to be in business, then instead of selling one to one or in groups or webinars or anything of that sort, why not sell and partner to larger established organizations that have the target audience that you are in alignment with. The beauty of this is that instead of making one sale at a time, because no matter if you sell on a webinar, each person individually has to go to that sales page and press the buy button. You are using the magic of minimum purchase orders, which means in the SBA example, in order for Keisha to execute this deal, SBA needs to purchase 45 programs, for example. And you can set a bulk rate or a value-based rate to say the cost of delivery for those 45 programs, the support model behind that is X amount of dollars. So there's a support fee. There's a technology fee to host the software that delivers it. And so what this does with SBA is now you're a valued content provider and partner of the SBA. Credibility through the roof. And so you have the referrals of the SBA, additional business. You're seen and promoted. You're now part of the SBA's promotional calendar. So you're on the website, you're in the emails. And so you've gained a marketing department. So it's a powerful way to utilize leverage. And so with this example on the far right, this is an example of peer-to-peer licensing. And so peer-to-peer licensing means, for example, if you are part of a joint venture community, for example, I'll use JVIC, for example, which is a well-known joint venture organization. You can partner with JVIC. So Keisha has a program for branding, for example. You can go to Rich or Iman, who own and operate JVIC, and say, hey, I have a program that I like to use as a bonus for your target audience. So everyone who joins gets this program if they sign up for the annual subscription for JVIC or for Collaborate or any of the events that they choose to host. And so that's a powerful way to align yourself with that particular organization. So there's numerous ways to do this where if another business coach, and this is another example of peer-to-peer, is if you have a business coach, two business coaches. So Bob, the business coach, meets Keisha, the brand strategist. And so Keisha says, hey, your business clients need branding. So I'm going to add my program as a bonus, and we can do a profit share of anyone who buys the VIP offer. And so you enter those numbers and those terms and conditions in your affiliate software, whether it's ThriveCard, Infusionsoft, you name it. And that's another way to profit from partnerships using intellectual property that has been packaged. And not only do I do this time and time again, but I teach my clients how to do this in a step-by-step manner. And so, in closing, intellectual property can grow your service-based business by separating your effort and your time invested, because now you're marketing a packaged offer versus your sweat equity. And so you can have multiple partnerships through non-exclusive licensing agreements. So you create a branding, let's say tips and tools, you can license that to numerous organizations and give them the same package, or they can pay for additional to, let's say, have custom options. That could be a template pack, that could be a delivery of a monthly strategy call, for example. Possibilities are endless, but that's all for now. And so tune in for Let's Talk Licensing at a future date. I'm Shadeed Eleazer, and I thank you for tuning in.